outline, I will re-emphasize what you are expected to know. All right, so along the way, you pick out all those key topics that will be covered in the final exam. Okay, in topic 1, basically we are talking about linking auditing to the economy. All right, so first of all, you have to know the role of the external auditor. The presence of the external auditor is actually to act as part of the monitoring mechanism to oversee the actions and conducts of the management. That means to ensure that they are behaving in the requirement or expected by the shareholders. Okay, so that is actually very common for private or public listed company. Okay, therefore, external auditors will come in, verify the financial statements, hence reduce the information risk, therefore enhance the true and fair view of the or provide reasonable assurance on the accuracy of the financial information that being stipulated in the financial statement. Okay, so by doing that, of course, later on, the audited financial statement will be used by many stakeholders. Okay, so therefore people would actually able to have trust, okay, on the transparency, on the information provided for their decision making, therefore build up the confidence of the market, okay, build up the confidence of the public, which would have the effect on the capital market, okay, of that particular country. That is actually how external auditors play the role in stimulating the economy of a particular country. But bear in mind, okay, that is in context of the private companies and also listed company. But in the context of the government, okay, in the context of the government, their external auditor is actually Jabatan Audit Negara or National Audit Department, okay, because they act as an external auditor of the ministry, where they come and audit all those ministry, and normally the report will be presented to the public in the first of all it will goes to the parliament, okay, where they presented, okay, what are the issues, what are the findings, and of course the objective is actually to ensure that the money or the grant that being given to all the respective ministry are being used in accordance to the requirement of the government policy, which is efficient, effectiveness, and also economic. Okay, so of course, it's still talking about transparency, okay, still talking about integrity, all right, and also confidence, okay, of the public towards the financial reporting that prepared by the government sector. Okay, so these are two different views in terms of the role of external auditor. Okay, topic 2 and topic 3 has been tested a lot in your midterm. Okay, so later I will discuss a little bit about your midterm. Okay, then the next one is corporate governance. Okay, corporate governance, in line back to just now what I mentioned. Okay, the presence of the corporate governance is actually to further strengthen the monitoring of the management. Going back, linked to the reasons of agency theory, why we need to monitor management has been explained in agency theory. So I hope you understand the reason, okay, the root cause why we need for monitoring mechanism. And when monitoring mechanism exists, such as board of directors, you need to understand why board of directors must exist. What are the importance of their role? What are the importance of their responsibility that they exist in the governance practices, and what actually they do in order to strengthen the monitoring of the management actions and conduct. Okay, because apart from board of directors, you also have independent directors. Okay, because in the board you have executive and non-executive directors, right? So therefore you if you look at the MCCG, they really emphasize on the importance of independent directors. Okay, independent directors, what are their roles, what are their roles in order to strengthen, okay, the good governance practices, and how they should actually prevent the occurrence of the fraudulent in financial reporting. Okay, and MCCG also emphasize on the importance of audit committee. Okay, so these are another party that also play the role. If you realize in the board of directors, you have many subcommittee. You have remuneration, nomination committee, but audit committee is the one that being emphasized more in order to strengthen financial reporting. Why? Simply because of their knowledge, okay, their background, that they have to know the financial reporting aspect. Okay, their financial background, their financial expertise is there to strengthen the quality of the financial reporting. So that's the reason why audit committee play the role in the governance process or good governance practices. Okay, and on top of that, okay, we also have internal audit, whereby to strengthen the presence of the audit committee. Okay, because looking at the monitoring mechanism, the presence of the internal audit is actually to oversee the effectiveness of the internal control system. All right, the effectiveness of the risk management system. Okay, because the conduct of the management, of course, internal audit check financial statement, all right, check operation activities and so on. Okay, but actually, apart from all these party, people that oversee the actions of the management, the conduct and behavior of the management also can be controlled through policies and procedures. Okay, so that's why risk management system are being used, internal control system are also being used in order to govern, okay, the behavior of the management in a company. All right. Okay, so that is actually in general who are the parties that involved in the corporate governance, and how they are important to further prevent the occurrence of the fraudulent in financial reporting. Okay, so the next one is internal audit. Okay, when talking about internal audit, it's very crucial for you to be able to differentiate the presence of the internal audit and the presence of external audit. Okay, so as I mentioned just now, external audit, their objective is to check financial statement. Okay, their presence is actually to see, to ensure the financial reporting is true and fair. Okay, all the informations are true and fair. Whereas internal audit, their presence is actually not just on the financial statement, but they are also looking at the operation. Okay, they are looking, the scope are slightly different between internal audit and external audit. So as an internal audit, when you're looking at operation, okay, you are also ensuring that the effectiveness of the operation are there, the efficiency of how they and economic use of the resources of the company are there in place. So their objective is also to fulfill the 3E. Okay, the economic efficiency and effectiveness of using the resources and also the process. Okay, so that's why the presence of internal audit is there for a certain reason. Okay, apart from that, they also support the needs of the information to the audit committee. Okay, all right. And then when talking about internal audit, okay, and talking about external audit, you also must be able to know that as an external auditor, we can actually rely on the work of internal auditor. Okay, so on what basis we can rely? To what extent that we can rely on the work of internal auditors? Okay, but of course there are criteria that we must look at. Okay, we must look at in order to use the work of internal auditors, because in the auditing standard there is specific standard that mentioned about the use of others' work in the conduct of the external audit. Okay, because they might rely to internal auditors, they might rely to other expert, okay, or to other parties whatsoever they can, but they must assess, okay, the independence and objectivity of the and also competency of that particular party before you rely on that. Okay, that's in general about. But of course, you must be able to know as well the presence of the internal auditor, because this one also relate back to some of the facts that in the midterm. One thing you must understand, internal audit department, internal audit in a particular company is being established. It can be in many forms, but according to MCCG, every company must have internal audit. They call it internal audit activity. Why they call it internal audit activity? Because the structure of the internal audit can be in the form of in-house, meaning you have a permanent department, or it can be in the form of outsource, or it can be in the form of co-source. That means you have your in-house department and also you use external resources in the case of where you need their expertise, okay, in the in order to rely on the internal audit. Okay, so that you must understand. Okay, so from there you'll be able to know in what sense internal audit activity can actually benefit the company. Okay. All right, and then talking about ethics. Okay, talking about ethics, basically what you need to know under the ethical standards, you learn about MIA by law, you learn about Companies Act, whereby you have, apart from your project, you are also already being asked, okay, to understand what are the scope of duties of the auditors, what are the responsibility of the auditors, okay, what that being stipulated in the Companies Act, that being stipulated in the MIA, where MIA strengthened further about competency, independence, objectivity, and all those things, integrity, and so on. Okay, so why all these criteria is actually important? Okay, how this would actually further strengthen the effectiveness of the external auditor, because we all know, right, if they actually have some misconduct here, it would actually open up the liability exposure, where now we go into the next topic talking about liability. So it's linked, these two are linked together. Okay, you must do your responsibility accordingly. All right, if let's say you have an engagement, you have the engagement letter as your contract, so you fulfill what are being required or stipulated in the engagement letter. If not, it will actually open up your liability exposure. Okay, so as an external auditor, you have to know what are your liability exposure to your immediate client, what are your liability exposure to the third party, okay, under the act, okay, under the law, and also you must also know what is your liability exposure under the common law, because if there is no act mention something whatsoever, you still have exposure under the common law on any basis that people can actually sue you. So in that case, you have to know how to minimize your liability exposure. Okay, from the point of view as a firm, how you want to minimize your liability exposure. As an individual, how you want to minimize your liability exposure. Okay, in the audit engagement, how you want to minimize your liability exposure. So you must know. Okay. So going back to ISQC1, okay, because ISQC1 already mentioned about the procedures that the firm must do, the engagement must do in order to ensure everything is actually being implemented in accordance to the requirement of the auditing standards. Okay, so that's why we always have our benchmark to refer to. Okay, so the earlier topic, okay, the MIA by law, the ISQC1, the Companies Act has already stipulated all those requirements, what must be done, what must be in place, or else you would actually be exposed to a certain liability exposure. But of course, if you expose, there are ways of how to minimize it to protect yourself, okay, from a bigger exposure. So as an auditor, you must know how to minimize your liability exposure, okay. And then other than that, okay, group audit, not so much. Fraud is very much related to the corporate governance just now, because the whole idea, the occurrence of the fraud is always to being minimized through the presence of corporate governance. Okay, and then of course, last but not least, is the topic of assurance and non-assurance services, whereby you must clearly know what does it mean by different types of services provided by the audit firm. Okay, because that day I already explained to you, okay, under this particular standard, all right, we learn about due diligence, we learn about profit forecast. We learn about compilation, review, what types of work fall under that category. Okay, what types of work fall under agreed upon procedures. All that we have gone through. Okay, so you need to be familiar with different types of services provided by the auditor. Okay. So those are the things that you are expected to know, okay, and where you will be tested in your final exam. Okay, question? Okay, if no question, then your final exam definitely will be 3 hours as usual. And the question will be posted on modular basis, meaning that the first question you will be answering the 10 multiple choice question. The same thing, you have your multi-MCQ question, then supported by the justification from you. All right, so all together you have 10 MCQ question together with the 10 mark justification, 20 marks there. So once you are done with that, you submit. Then after that, we proceed to question 2, 3, and 4. So basically, you have 3 short essay question, which of course you have sub question underneath. So the time allocated will be depending on the marks given for the question. So if let's say 30 marks per question, so you are given 55 minutes plus another 10 minutes for submission. Okay, so the same thing, submission all can be done in PDF format, one file, saved in accordance to what instruction ask you to do. Okay, because it's easier for me, especially at the end of the exam, I need to check who have submitted the correct file, who have not submitted the correct file, because there are cases whereby during the midterm you submitted wrong file from different subject. So gone case lah because whatever that, if let's say I detect late, then you cannot resubmit again. Okay, so meaning that you will get 0. Okay, so this is very important. So that's why you must follow instruction. If I say save the file, follow this format, then please follow that format. Don't use your format. Okay, if anything wrong, that's your mistake. All right, so I try to facilitate, okay, to further reduce the error in submission. All right, because we want to ensure, because whatever beyond that time, no more submission will be accepted for your final. Okay, so normally I will straight away download the file. All right, so whatever that file, that's it. Right, no further query or request or whatever will be entertained after the submission period. Okay, so please comply to that particular requirement. So you have practically about 4 slots of questions, okay, to answer later on. And you can answer in the using Google Doc, which later Word later transform into PDF. Okay, and then you can also using handwritten, and then you scan and convert into PDF, whichever ways that you feel that you want to use, go ahead, as long as you submit a complete one. And make sure on all pages you write your page number. So on your side, you know you have submitted the complete page number papers that you want to submit for that particular question. Okay, because there are cases whereby incomplete. Okay, then when we do the marking, we actually cannot sure that you have actually submit the completed. So sequence are very important. Metric number are also important, because in case you want to recheck, then when they print, they actually print the right question, the right answer script, and so on. All those for control reason. So that's why you learn audit, you know, they are there for a reason. Okay, so one of that is to control mechanism to ensure the completeness, right, of all the scripts, because this is all digital copy. All right. Okay, so in general, that's basically about the final exam. Okay, any questions? So your carry marks hopefully will be within this week, or hopefully by early next week. Any more question that you want to ask? Okay, if no more question, then I will go to your midterm. Okay, your midterm actually I've marked and I have written, okay, through your Google form. So for your midterm, overall is not so bad, all right, but there are certain areas whereby I noticed a lot of mistake happen, okay, which I assume the understanding is a bit lacking, okay, in that particular area, all right. So that's where I would like to further strengthen your understanding on that particular area. Okay, what I pick up from the midterm, right? Okay, because you are dealing with a lot of completion, issues that happen during the completion after year end, before signing and so on. So you must be clear, Okay, here the accounts actually belong to management. All right, the accounts belong to management. So meaning whenever as an auditor you find issues, you find errors, you find misstatement, all right, the adjustment is not to be taken up by auditor. Okay, the moment you put like that, it's wrong lah. Okay, that means you don't understand. Okay, so what you should say is that auditor can propose adjustment. Okay, that means when you found errors, you propose adjustment to the management. So it's up to the management whether they want to take up that particular adjustment or not. Okay, because the accounts is their account, not your account, not auditor's account. Okay, so you just perform your work on that particular account. All right, so that's one. Second thing is about the independent of the internal audit department. Okay, just now I already mentioned about the structure, right? Okay, internal audit activity can exist in many forms, rather in-house, outsource, and so on. So how do you ensure that? Because they are part of the department in the company, how you ensure that they are actually independent? Okay, so one thing is how to ensure they are independent. Number one, internal audit, chief audit executive or head of internal audit must report to audit committee. Then only they are independent, because audit committee normally consists of independent directors, which is not part of the executive director. So they are free to report any issues with regard to the company to the audit committee. Okay, so that's the reason for another question whereby internal audit should not report to financial controller, because financial controller might want to filter, okay, or to stop certain information from reaching the audit committee or board of directors. Okay, so that's how the reporting, okay, to the audit committee is actually very crucial, because to ensure the independence are actually in place, right? So for those who answer internal auditor must maintain the objectivity and so on, that one is not the most correct answer. Okay. All right, and then another thing, okay, this is again for your clear understanding, all right, completion. Okay, when talking about completion, all right, you have year end. Okay, and then you have audit report, date of audit report. Okay, so there are events that happen here, all right, there are also events that happen here. Okay, so as an auditor, all right, you normally, whatever events that happen, you always like want to double check, okay, to get comfort, everything is okay. Financial statement here is actually still true and fair view. Okay, because you are talking about financial statement for that particular year end, right? Okay, so whatever events happen after year end, after the day of the report or before the day of the report, whatever it is, you always want to ensure financial statement are intact. Okay, it's not affected. So how do you know? Number one, you compare against materiality. Is it significant or not significant? Okay, if it is not significant, then nothing lah. All right, but if it is significant, then you will see, is it probable to happen or not probable to happen? Okay, because there are events that might have a real impact, okay, that would have because if it is probable to happen, more likely to happen, therefore adjustment might required. Okay, adjustment for the financial statement may be required. Okay, but If it is not probable, then no adjustment required, or perhaps you do disclosure. So adjustment and disclosure are two different things. Okay, you can either adjust no disclosure, or you can adjust with the disclosure, or no adjustment but you have disclosure. Okay, so there are three different ways of how you handle a certain event. Okay, certain event depending on the impact, okay, the level of impact that they bring into the financial statement for that particular year. All right, okay. So that one you must understand, all right, because from the way that how you all answer, some of you answer, I noticed that the understanding is a bit like confused lah, I would say. Okay, maybe you're not sure because it's all involved judgment. Okay, whether the issues are actually material or not material. Okay, all right. So that's with regard to the how you treat the events that happen after year end, before or after the date of the auditor's report. But of course, as an auditor, when you have this, you will perform audit procedures. Okay, so if you can answer the most correct audit procedures, of course you will get more marks lah. Okay. All right, and then after that, okay, internal audit. IT audit. Okay, IT audit here actually refer to this question, sequencing no, batch total and sequencing. This one, Okay, why batch total is wrong? All right, sequence checking is the right answer. Okay, you're talking about inventory data to ensure the completeness and accuracy of the inventory data. Let's say we are talking about recording inventory that received by the warehouse. How do I know it's all complete and accurate? Okay, if we just key in, based on the report, we refer to batch total. How do we know there are some reports are missing or some transactions has not been taken up? So batch total would only tell you how many records has been updated in the system. Okay, all right. Of course, it can tell you complete and accuracy, but you did not sure there are some missing documents are actually not being captured into the recording. So by testing the sequencing, you'll be able to know, okay? Because when you record the inventory received, you would actually base on the document, goods received note. So goods received note, you have numbering system, sequence, right? Okay. So of course, when you key in the number, all right? You key in the running number. So when you test the sequencing, you can actually find the gap. If there is a gap, that means there are some documents not being taken up in the system. Okay, so that's why sequence checking is actually the most accurate testing or control that we use in order to ensure completeness and accuracy. So that's the difference between sequencing and batch total. Okay, so another example of batch total is it's just a total to tell you, okay, how many has been updated. Okay, but it's not actually telling you whether it's complete or not in the full way lah, okay, in the proper way. All right. Like when you go and buy groceries at Giant, okay, after they punch in, they will tell you, right, how many quantity has been punched and so on. So that's also another way of how to test completeness and accuracy. But here in this context, sequencing are the most accurate. Okay. That's in terms of the automated control. And then information rate I have mentioned just now. Okay, one more thing is the legal expense, because this is where the question, many of you get it wrong. My legal expense. Okay, one of the tests, normally we want to check whether contingent liability has been disclosed or not by the company. Okay, so sometimes we're not sure whether the company has actually, this one, whether the company has actually completely disclosed to you all the contingent liability. Okay, so to double check, right, to double check alternative procedures auditors do is that we cross check legal expense account. okay, from the legal expense account, all right, we can actually tell because if you have issues, okay, if you have court case, all right, legal issues or whatever, you would always communicate a lot with your legal counsel. Okay, and definitely they will charge you more. All right, so that's why when we go through the legal expense account, we can actually see the bills and the statement that that the company charged to the account is actually very high. Okay, and then when we actually verify, so once you check the ledger, and then another one, you also check the, here they mentioned invoice and also statement. Why we check invoice and statement? Because on the invoice, it would actually mention, when they bid, they would actually mention the invoice is for what, for what, for what. Okay, so from there, you can actually see perhaps the dispute between this party and this party has been charged but has not been declared to the auditor. So that's why we go through to the invoices and also statement, because we want to double confirm, okay, all contingent liabilities actually has been notified, okay, to the auditor. Okay, so that's the reason why we scrutinize legal expense. Okay, letter of rep. I can't remember for which question, but some of you use that letter of rep. Can't remember lah which question, but adalah ramai juga lah using they mention letter of rep. Okay, letter of rep, you must understand what is letter of rep. Letter of representation is actually letter issued by management to tell auditors that they know these are their responsibility, these are the things that they can do, the things that they cannot do. Okay, so it actually tells out the management responsibility, which is not fit into the context that you are using in answering that particular question. I can't remember which question, okay, but because that time when I'm marking, I just keep in key points. Sorry about that. Okay, but I believe the understanding of the letter of representation tu tak sampai. Okay, so that is actually letter of representation. Okay, so I already mentioned just now. All right, so that is actually overall how some of the issues or some of the, I believe the clarity on the understanding is a bit lacking because I look at the analysis of the marks. Okay, because I did analysis of the marks by question. So from there, I can actually know which are the questions that have very low marks, which are the questions that has a very high marks. Okay, so these are the areas where students score lower marks, right? So that's where I pick up the issues about the topic that perhaps you need clarification. Okay.